Here we go. Good old Ann.
Has she ever been wrong?
Oh, yeah. Every once in a while I make a mistake. So does she. Magnitude. That's the fancy physics word. If you said size, sure. But if you want to sound science nerdy, magnitude and direction. Cannonball is fired horizontally. I'm going to dulp. So I got room here. I said, okay, here's my cliff. Horizontally, it looks like the cliff is 25 meters high. As a displacement, that's going to be negative 25. It's got a velocity of 80 meters per second. They want me to find time, and they want me to find dx, t-table. Horizontal, vertical. I know ax is 0. I know ay equals negative 9.8. I know vx is 80. I know vy initial is 0 because it's horizontally from a cliff. And I know that dy is negative 25. You know what? I'm going to solve for time vertically. I'm going to use d equals at squared over 2 as long as those are both vertical. Since vi is 0, gone. Which means I don't need to, by the way, you could solve this with the quadratic equation. It'll work. But I don't need to. I can get the t by itself. T is going to be 2 times d over a square root. It's going to be the square root of 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8. 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8 square root. You get 2.26 seconds? If you got that, 2 out of 2. Otherwise, I would give you half mark if I saw that, half mark for that, half mark for the numbers, and a half mark for the answer. Yep. Although technically I did, no, I said 2 or 3 sig figs. Yep, you're good. B. I think to find the range, I'm going to use that. What happened to the plus a half at squared? 0. But you can see it's tempting to want to put the 9.8 into there because there's no acceleration. Yes, there is. It's exactly 0 as a number. There is an acceleration. It's 0. There's no force acting horizontally. So it's going to be 80 times, I'll write 2.26, but you know I'm using my answer button. 181, and I would take 180 meters. 2 out of 2 if you got that. Otherwise, I would give you 1 whole mark for that, half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answer. If you got the time wrong, but for part B, you went 80 times your answer from part A, Kyle, I would give you 2 out of 2 for part B. Okay. Number 2, horizontal and vertical components of the velocity. Okay. I'll dulp right about there. 58 degrees above the horizontal, 28 meters per second. Vx, Vy initial. I could do the full trig, but does anybody remember what was the stupid memory trick for what Vy was? Which trig function?
I think Jack's.
Jack, which trig function was Vy? Sine. Can you tell me which trig function Vx was? Of course you can. Again, that won't necessarily work for boat going across the river or airplane in a crosswind. That only works if they give you the angle with the horizontal, but Grace, for a projectile, that's what I'll always give you. So if you're looking for a dumb shortcut. So Vx is going to be 28 cos 58, 14.8. And Vy is going to be 28 sine 58. $23.7. And units and units. If you forgot units, I would take a half mark off. Sorry. B, what is the maximum height? Okay, I'll do B right here so I got room. Height, that's vertical. Instead of doing a full t-table, I'm just going to do the vertical part of the t-table. So I'm going to make my list. I have VY initial is 23.7. I know AY is negative 9.8. They want me to find DY. That's only two things. I need three things to find the fourth. Oh, what else do I know at the maximum height? I got to be fussy. The velocity is VY final is 0. There's still a VX. Okay. Raise your hand if you think there will come a point this year when we catch Manchin slacking. There you go. Yeah, he even raised his own hand there. Okay. Won't catch me slacking. Oh, hey, I don't need to. By the way, you could find time and then find VY final. And then find D. I can get there straight with VF squared equals VI squared plus 2AD. I can go D equals VF squared minus VI squared all over 2A. This equation is also technically redundant. There are some teachers that don't teach this equation. You can do it all with VF equals VI plus AT and D equals VIT plus half AT squared. It just means sometimes you're finding something in order to find something in order to find something. Good morning, good morning. I'm so glad you made it. Going to be 0 squared minus 23.7 squared, although I'm going to use my answer button. So I'm going to go 0 squared, not that the squared made a difference, but minus answer button squared divided by 2 times negative 9.8. Y'all get 28.8? Or yes? Yep. And that's meters. I would give you 2 out of 2 if you got that. Otherwise, 1 mark for the equation, half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answers. If you got VY initial wrong, but you dropped it down here and you went 0 squared minus that thing squared, I would give you 2 out of 2. Common mistakes I see, by the way, for the components. I have seen kids put the VY here and the VX here. Don't do that. C, how long is the projectile in the air for? One way to do this would be to find time to top, because VY final is 0, and double it. I'm going to get there in 1 step. So T equals question mark. I know VY initial is 23.7. I know AY is negative 9.8. I know VY final, it's negative 23.7. The only thing is, I'd like to use my answer button, so I'm going to go 28 sine 58 again, and now I've got it stored as my answer button. And I'm going to go, let's see, T equals V final minus V initial over A. It's going to be V final, bracket, negative answer button. There's V final, negative 23.74, blah, blah, minus V initial, all over negative 9.8. I had somebody, I don't remember who was in this block, who said, Mr. Dewick is a shortcut. Isn't that just negative 2 times VY? Yeah. I just never bothered typing that in, but yeah. 4.85? Now, this rounds off close enough. If you said 4.84 because you used a rounded off value, I'd probably give that as well. But I'm going to go 4.85 seconds. I would give you 2 out of 2 for that. I would give you 1 mark for that, 1 mark for that. How many of you found time to top and then doubled it? So if you did that and you got the right answer, I'd give you 2 out of 2. The most common mistake, kids forget to double it. I would give you 1 out of 2 because to me that's a pretty serious error. Who knows another way? Anybody find it using the quadratic formula and distance? How high were you when you started on this question? How high are we when we started? How far off the ground? How far off the ground have we started on this question? What's our initial height? We haven't turned the page yet. Hold on. So on the question we just did, what's our initial height? Did we start on the ground?
0.
What's our initial height?
0.
What's our final height?
2. Oh.
In part C, what's our final height? 0. So what's our vertical displacement? If we started at 0 and ended at 0, what's our vertical displacement technically?
0.
You could actually use dy equals 0, and you get 0 equals VIT plus a half AT squared. And you can solve that quadratic, and it'll work. So Vy initial would go there, negative 4.9 will go there. C in the quadratic term will be 0, and you'll also get the 4.85. It's just way more work. I would never do it that way. But it does work. Okay, now turn the page. I see compass directions, so I'm going to do a compass rose. Force F1, 5 newtons east, plus 12 newtons south. So it's going to look like this. 5 plus 12. There is the resultant force F. So for a correctly labeled diagram, I need to see a 5 and a 12 added together tip to tail. You could go 12 first down and then 5 right. I would give you full credit for that. For you to get the full marks, I need to see arrows on the ends of your vectors. If you don't, I would take a half mark off. And then the resultant is, 13. It works out evenly, yeah? This is the 5, 12, 13 triangle. It does work out evenly, does it not? Yeah. And then at theta, color, tan theta equals 12 over 5. Uh, 67.4 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? I think this is going to be south of east, or I would take 90 minus 22.6 degrees east of south. If you got that 2 out of 2, otherwise typically I give 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the what of what. And 1 mark for the vector diagram. So that question's out of 3. 4. Why did I sigh? Because I saw an angle. Did I say angle? I see components here. Okay. I've scrolled down, so I'm going to put a compass rose. And I'm using the idea that the engine speed, velocity, plus the wind speed, velocity, equals the ground speed. Should be called velocity, but they don't call it that, so okay. The engine speed looks like it's 220 due east. Crosswind 80 meters per second at 30 degrees north of east. North of what? East. North of what? East. I'm going to start out going east. I'm going to go 30 degrees north of east. And that's 80. Grace, I see angles, components. I'm going to break this one up into a Vx and a Vy. Hey, you know what? That 30 is sitting in the same place it does on projectiles. I'll bet you Vy is sine and Vx is cosine. I'll bet you. If I had forgotten, I could always do the trig. But, yeah. So, it's going to look like this. 220 plus Vy is going to be 80 sine 30. I'm pretty sure that it works out to 40 even, yes? Vx is going to be 80 cos 30. I have no idea what that is. 69.282. And so I'm going to argue that this is really plus 220. Is this a quiz? I'll use my calculator on a quiz or a test. Even for 5 plus 5, I might be tempted to use my... I've made so many dumb mistakes, right? I get numbers mixed up. 2 plus 3 is 6 is one of the ones I do all the time because I multiplied it instead of adding it. So I'm going to go 289.282. .282 plus 40. Okay, I didn't leave very much room. I need to reformat this quiz because here's what you're going to get. I think I can fit it in down here. Long baseline of 282.282 plus a short 40. Here is V ground. So if I saw this vector triangle somewhere, I would give you 1 mark. Did anybody add them using the sine law and the cosine law? Okay, I'll show you, remind me, I'll show you how I'd give part marks, but if you get the same thing as me, you're good. It's going to be, is it 280? Oh, 289, you're right. Thank you for catching that. Who said that? You get a candy.
I said it.
Proving my point from earlier. Squared plus 40 squared, square root. Do you all get a magnitude of 292? At tan theta is going to be 40 over 289.282. It's going to be a pretty small angle. $7.87, is that what you said? If you said 7.9 degrees, I'm fine with that. North of south, east of west, what of what? Sky, is that what you got okay? Yep. So yeah, if you did it using the sine law and the cosine law, you would go like this. What was the original? 220 plus 40. This angle here is 30 degrees, so this angle here is 150 degrees. There's your resultant. And you can use the cosine law. It's going to be 220 squared plus 40 squared minus 2 times 220 times 40 times cosine of 150, square root of that. And there's the, oh, I did that wrong, Mr. Duick. Is it 220? I forgot the right numbers. 220 and 40. And I made a typo. Where did I make a typo? Mr. Duick, did you do something wonky here? Should have been 292. 2 times 220 times 40. Sorry? Did I do it wrong? 80. 80, Mr. Duick. 80. Thank you. I did write it down wrong. This is 80, Mr. Duick. Well, that'll fix it. 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220. Helps if you copy the question down wrong. Times the cosine of 150, square root. There we go. That gives you the magnitude of the 292, and then you use the sine law. I can do that method actually faster than the component method, but I know some kids, there was a few years where we had various like snow days and things where kids hadn't seen the sine law or the cosine law, so I stopped emphasizing that. But I'll give you full credit if you're good with it, okay? For the rest of us, 1 mark for the vector diagram. And then 1 mark for that. half mark for the theta, half mark for the what of what? Number 5. I see angles, components, Cliff. It's going to be quadratic formula. Horizontal, vertical, AX is 0. AY is negative 9.8. VY initial, VY is going to be sine. So that's going to be 20 sine 30. Does VY initial work out to 10 exactly? VX is going to be 20 cos 30. 17.321. In fact, I think I used the same diagram in our notes and just copied it over. dy is negative 36. I know it says find the range, but I'm going to spend most of my time finding time. It's going to end up being the quadratic formula. dy equals vy initial t plus a half ay t squared. Negative 36 equals 10t minus 4.9 t squared. 4.9 t squared minus 10t equals, minus 36 equals 0. Pull out your quadratic formula or pull out your quadratic solver. T is going to be, well, that's A, that's B, that's C. So T is going to be negative B, which makes the negative 10 positive, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. T is going to be bracket 10 plus the square root of 10 squared. I didn't bother typing the negative 10 inside the square root because the negative is going to get squared anyways, Jack, so who cares? Minus 4 times 4.9 times negative 36. Close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 9.8. Check for typos. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That looks good. Do you get 3.9166 seconds as one of your values? And I'll get another answer, a negative answer. Negative 1.88. Reject, like Matt trying to dunk.
Not Sam this time. You get some time.
Oh, I'm not even done. This question wanted me to find the range. dx equals vxt. Vx was 17.321 times 3.91166. Oh, wrong answer, Mr. Duick. I did that last time, too. I want the positive one. There, that's stored in my calculator. 17.321 times answer button. Do you get 67.8?
Yes.
Sorry, what was that?
67.7.
So did you use 3.9166 or did you use 3.912?
3.912.
Yeah, don't round off so much. I'll give you full credit, but try and avoid rounding off till the very end. Carry some extra sig figs along the way. If you got that, that would give you 7 out of 7. Otherwise, I would probably do something like this. I would give you 1 mark. Sorry, do it in the chart. I would give you 1 mark if you found Vx, 1 mark if you found Vy. I would probably give you 1 mark if I saw the physics no-brainer, because that's not a no-brainer. You need to know some physics. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that equation. I would give you 1 mark if you found time successfully, whether you used a quadratic solver or the quadratic formula. I don't care. That's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll give you 1 mark for that and 1 mark for the answer. Is that all right? Mr. Dueck? Yeah. You had mentioned that there was a workaround where you didn't need to use the quadratic formula. Yep, there is. Don't write this down, or write this down if you're struggling with a quadratic formula. On this line here, when I know A, VI, and D, when I know AY, VY, and DY, which was negative 36, I can only find time with the quadratic formula, but you know what I could find? I could find Vy final using Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 2AD. It's going to be the square root of Vi squared plus 2AD. Make sure that's vertical, make sure that's vertical, make sure that's vertical. The only problem with this, Davis, is your calculator will give you a positive answer. I know I want the negative answer because Vy final is when it hits the ground. So you'll have to add the negative after the fact. But once you do that, then you can use T equals Vf minus Vi over A, vertical, vertical, vertical. And that'll work. By the way, this little thing right here is B squared minus 4AC in disguise. You're actually doing the quadratic formula in steps without realizing that you're doing the quadratic formula. So if that appeals to you more than using the quadratic formula, hit me up tomorrow, tomorrow I see you. Hit me up Thursday during a Teams session or Friday, or you can come in person and I can walk you through it. 6 was way easier than 5, yes? No quadratic? I can already tell because they gave me horizontal. Horizontal is much nicer. It's the same initial velocity setup. So in the interests of time, AX is 0, AY is negative 9.8. I believe VX was 17.321. VY initial was 10. This time, though, they gave me the range DX. You know what? I'm going to find time horizontally. Jack, way nicer, because horizontally, dx equals vxt, yes, plus a half at squared. But Jack, what's my horizontal acceleration? So it's just going to be 17.321. Oh no, to get the time by itself, how would I get the time by itself? Divide what? Like that? 154 divided by 17.321. No quadratic formula required. And I get 8.890. I'll write 8.89, but I'll store this on my calculator. Is that right? People nodding? Now they want me to find the height. Height is going to be vertical. So to solve it vertically, I'm going to have Vy initial was 0. No, was 10, Mr. Duke. Let's try that again. Vy initial was 10. Ay was negative 9.8. Time is 8.89. I can totally find dy. I can use d equals vit plus a half at squared, but remind myself, vertical, vertical, vertical. 10 times 8.89, answer button, plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times 8.89 squared. 10 times answer button plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times answer button squared. Y'all get negative 298. Why negative? Because we ended up below from where we started. If you called your final answer positive because it said height, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to be fussy on that yet. There will come a unit after spring break when I get fussier. If you got that right, 7 out of 7. Otherwise, as before, I would give you 1 mark if I saw the physics no-brainers, 1 mark for that, 1 mark for that, 1 mark if I saw that, 1 mark for finding time, 1 mark for that. What am I up to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 mark for the answer. Can you give yourself a lovely score, please, out of 31? If you need to lawyer with me, now is the time.